As you might be aware of, My Little Pony the movie got early screenings in Germany. So I of course jumped at the opportunity to be the first to review it. However, think of this video more like my first impression. I will go into more detail in a later video, where I try to keep this one spoiler free. Okay, to get it out of the way, it's a fine movie. I had a good time and it was pretty awesome to see my favorite horses on the big screen. The different art directions still need some time to get used to, but it looks overall much better than the trailer would make you believe. It looks pretty gorgeous at times, but at other times the character models seem a bit out of place and seem more like they don't belong in front of that specific background. Though maybe that's just me. However, for the most part, I enjoyed the visuals. Not to mention that there are a lot of easy to miss Easter eggs in the background, at least in Canterlot, so people that like to do frame by frame analysis have something to look forward to. So yeah, visuals are pretty good, but what about the rest? Well, being My Little Pony, the movie, it of course tries to be as big as possible, but I think this is perhaps a thing that holds this movie back. As the main six deal with a world-ending threat at least once a season, it's pretty hard to raise the stakes. In fact, some parts feel a bit like a rehash of previous two-parters. Though while there are some similarities, things play out much different. So besides what some people feared, no, this is not a carbon copy of Twilight's Kingdom. In an attempt to be big, the main six travel to lands beyond Equestria, which is admittedly pretty cool. We see a lot of awesome new places, full of atmospheres that are much different from what we have seen in the show so far. But it feels like they are just jumping from one set piece to the next, while singing a song in between. We barely stay long enough at one point to actually learn something about it. Combine this with a lot of new characters and it feels overcrowded. The new characters barely get enough room for development and seem rather flat as a result. The only exception being Kappa the cat, who pretty much steals the show. No, really, he is like the best character. This doesn't mean that they are outright bad. In fact, I like most of them a lot, especially Princess Skystar is adorable, and Sailor and her pirates aren't half bad either, but they all get barely enough time to shine. Also, while the adventure itself is pretty enjoyable, it feels completely pointless by the end and hardly affects the outcome of this movie, besides the fact that Twilight and Co have a couple of new friends now. The main six, by the way, deal with the same problem as in every two-parter. There are 6 of them, but only so much screen time to share. As a result, Fluttershy and Applejack barely contribute anything of importance, while Rarity and Rainbow Dash get pretty much one scene to shine each. Though Twilight's character arc throughout the movie is an interesting idea, as she starts to become her own antithesis, as she doesn't want to trust anyone else, which puts her in conflict with Pinkie Pie of all ponies, who besides a small scene that is very reminiscent of her performance in Philly Vanilli, really gets to shine in this movie. The contrast of Pinkie and Twilight is actually pretty interesting, but it could have been explored more and it comes with some cliches. The villains also suffer similar problems. We have Tempest Shadow and the Storm King, the latter barely appearing in the movie until the final battle, which is quite a shame because he's a fun character that can still be very intimidating. But we don't see enough of him. And while our edgy unicorn Tempest is somewhat interesting, she also seems a bit one-note due to a lack of time, and yes, her character arc ends pretty much the way you think it will, involving some twists you see coming from miles away. And then there's also Grubber, and frankly I don't know why he is there. In theory he is obviously meant to be a comic relief character, as if we need another one when Pinkie Pie gets the most focus next to Twilight. So Grubber is just kinda there. You could cut him out of the movie and nothing would be lost, which is kinda sad because I started warming up to him after reading The Stormy Road to Canterlot. Speaking of The Stormy Road to Canterlot, there are 1 or 2 details that seemingly contradict the chapter book, while other things are rather spot on. Though these contradictions could be explained to some degree, but it lines up pretty well with the comics. There was a bit confusion about Kappa's background story, as his official character description contradicted the comic, but the movie seems to be more in line with the comics on this one. That being said, while I would recommend to check them out, you don't need to read the chapter book or the comics to enjoy this movie. I think it makes it a bit more enjoyable when you know more about these new characters, but you don't need to read extra stuff to know what is going on. That being said, while you don't need to read comics or chapter books, you still need to know the basics of the show. but if you are into the show, you probably have other questions. For example, when is this supposed to take place? In case you were wondering, Starlight's existence is not really acknowledged in the story, but she appears in the background alongside Trixie, so it still indicates that this movie takes place after Starlight's redemption. But Twilight feels more like her season 4 self, and then other questions come to mind like, why don't they go ask Amber, Forex or even the Yaks for help? Each of them could be a powerful ally, not to mention Discord, who could solve everything with one finger snap, and so on. Anyway, let's wrap things up. My Little Pony the movie is quite good, but it is sadly not the masterpiece we hoped it to be. It tries way too much at once and introduces way more characters than it can handle. They obviously put a lot of effort into making this movie as great as possible, but I get the feeling that they shot a bit too high. However, it is still a very entertaining adventure movie with a lot of charm to it. Though admittedly I think this spoiler-free review doesn't exactly do it justice. I have a lot more to say about this movie, so stay tuned because I'm not done yet. And always remember to stay foxy.
Sly as a fox, you got me under your spell. But you know I'll never tell that I know you know so well.